For most of the 20th century, there were two companies in America that knew what was in your kitchen, what was in your garage, what was in your closet, what your kids wanted for Christmas, and what insurance you carried. One of them was the U.S. government. The other one was Sears, and it ran the country quietly for 60 years. It started usually in August, not December, August. The Sears Christmas Wish Book arrived in the summer, theoretically to give budget-conscious families time to plan. But everyone understood the real reason. 600 pages takes time. You didn't flip through a wish book. You studied it. You dog-eared the corners, circled things in pen, wrote your name next to items so your siblings couldn't claim them. One description of the 1973 edition captures the family dynamic exactly. Mom had her pages, pages 58 to 123, and pages starting at 237, and the kids had theirs. The book sat on the coffee table for months. It was a shared document, a household negotiation, a printed record of everything the family wanted to become. Richard Warren Sears started it all with watches. In 1886, working as a railway station agent in North Redwood, Minnesota, a local jeweler refused delivery on a shipment of pocket watches. Sears bought the shipment, sold them to other station agents up and down the line, and made a profit. He launched a mail-order watch business in Minneapolis that same year, partnered with watch repairman Alva Curtis Roebuck, and by 1888 had issued his first printed catalog, Watches and Jewelry, Thin and Purposeful. By 1893, the company was formally incorporated as Sears, Roebuck and Company. By 1895, the catalog ran 532 pages, and the company grossed $750,000 a year. By 1900, it had passed Montgomery Ward in sales, a lead it never relinquished. What Sears was actually selling wasn't merchandise, it was access. The catalog bypassed every layer of markup that rural Americans had been absorbing for generations. The wholesaler, the general store, the local merchant who controlled prices because there was no alternative. The catalog arrived by mail and offered the selection of a big city department store to a farmhouse in Nebraska. Local merchants understood immediately what that meant. In one documented episode, rural retailers organized public bonfires in the town square and paid children in movie tickets to bring Sears catalogs to burn. The catalogs kept coming. Sears kept growing. By 1906, the company had built a 3 million square foot complex on Chicago's West Side, described at the time as the largest business building in the world. 2 city blocks of railroad track ran through its center, connecting Sears directly to every major trunk line out of Chicago. More than 7,000 workers operated miles of conveyor belts and bin sorters through the 9-story facility. The building had its own printing department, with railroad tracks running paper straight to the presses to produce the millions of catalogs distributed each year. By 1916, Sears was mailing more than 50 million catalogs annually. That 40-acre complex on Homan Avenue served as the base of the mail-order operation until 1995. The writer Harry Crews, in his 1978 autobiography of growing up in tenant-farmer poverty in Bacon County, Georgia, called the Sears catalog the Farmer's Bible. The highest form of entertainment in his household was to thumb through it with his neighbor Willie and make up stories about the models on the pages. Without that catalog, Crews wrote, their childhood would have been radically different. The federal government ought to strike a medal for Sears Roebuck Company for sending all those catalogs to farming families, for bringing all that color and all that mystery and all that beauty into the lives of country people. That was 1978. The catalog had been doing exactly that for 80 years. By the late 1970s, Sears mailed 315 million catalog copies a year, generating $3 billion in annual catalog sales from 28 million customers. At peak, the general merchandise catalog ran roughly 1,400 pages and covered more than 100,000 items. You could order clothing, furniture, hardware, farm equipment, sporting goods, and, between 1908 and 1942, actual mail-order homes, complete kit houses delivered in crates and assembled on-site. Catalog revenue alone exceeded the combined sales of the next 4 catalog competitors, Ward, Penny, Spiegel, and Alden. The Christmas edition had its own specific gravity. First published in 1933, that initial 78-page book featured Miss Pigtail's dolls, live singing canaries, 5-pound chocolate boxes, and a Mickey Mouse watch. Customers had been calling it the Wish Book for years before Sears officially renamed it in 1968, by which point it had already grown to 608 pages. By 1980, it ran 668 pages. The 1992 edition, the largest ever, reached 834 pages. The Wish Book ran annually from 1933 to 2011, 78 consecutive years. Ordering was designed to be frictionless. You could phone in your order, fill out the mail-in form, visit the catalog sales office, or walk into the nearest Sears store and use the catalog sales desk, where a clerk would take down your information and bring the package out from the back. The system was built for people who lived 35 miles from the nearest department store. Michelle Woltman of rural Wisconsin, interviewed by the Los Angeles Times when the catalog closed in 1993, still used it to dress her own 10-year-old daughter the same way her mother had dressed her. The closest department store was 35 miles away, she explained. There were 4 of us kids and only 1 car. In its final year of operation, 14 million Americans still ordered from the catalog every year. The Wish Book trained a generation of children to want things in an organized way. Reader Claudia Buehler-Birkenmeyer recalled fighting with her brother and sister to be the first one through the toy section. Writer Rolf Potts, describing the 1976 edition, put it precisely. The 1976 Wish Book gave name to desires I never knew I had, and I listed them all. Model airplanes and NFL logo AM radio sets, popcorn poppers and Tinker toys. The catalog arrived in August, which meant 4 months of anticipation before December. That gap was deliberate. Sears wanted you to want things long enough that they became necessities. The physical store delivered a different kind of completeness. A full-line Sears store in the 1970s and early 1980s was a particular kind of place, fully air-conditioned, windowless, pioneered in that design as early as the 1930s, a format every suburban department store would eventually copy. Certain locations had cafeterias where families ate lunch between errands. Sears had been operating in-store restaurants since at least 1978, and memoir accounts from Alabama describe Sears as one of 3 department stores in Birmingham running full-service lunch counters. There was an optical shop, a portrait studio, a catalog pickup counter, an auto service center accessible directly from the parking lot. Hardware through one end, women's clothing through another, electronics and appliances somewhere in between. All under one roof, all the same hours. Once you were inside, every task on your list had an address. Craftsman anchored the hardware end of that experience, and it held a position in American garages that nothing else has replicated before or since. The brand was introduced on May 20th, 1927, when a Sears hardware buyer named Arthur Barrows paid $500 for the rights to a name from the Marion Craftsman Tool Company. Barrows' successor, Tom Dunlap, rebuilt the product line, threw out the big, clumsy, cheap cast-iron tools left over from the farm equipment era, added chrome plating to wrenches and sockets, fitted high-impact plastic handles onto screwdrivers. Dunlap's former boss thought nobody would chrome-plate a tool someone was going to slug the hell out of. Sales of the chrome-plated line jumped 6-fold the year Dunlap introduced them. What made Craftsman permanent was the warranty. Sears' official language read, "If for any reason your Craftsman hand tool ever fails to provide complete satisfaction, return it to any Sears store or other Craftsman outlet in the United States for free repair or replacement. No receipt, no questions, no time limit." A man could find a broken Craftsman wrench at a garage sale, no idea when it was purchased, no idea who bought it, walk into any Sears store and walk out with a new one. People did this deliberately. Former Sears employees recalled customers arriving with tools found in elderly relatives' workshops, swapping decades-old wrenches for brand new ones without a word of explanation required. Someone in 2023 successfully exchanged a 50-year-old Craftsman ratchet wrench under the warranty. The tools outlasted the company that made the promise. Sears didn't manufacture Craftsman tools. The brand operated as an umbrella through more than 20 contractors, each identified by a 3-digit model prefix. What Sears provided was the certification and the guarantee. The quality it demanded from those contractors and the promise it stood behind unconditionally gave the brand the weight of an institution. By the 1970s, a Craftsman toolbox in the garage was as reliable a signal of American working-class stability as a paid-off mortgage. Kenmore first appeared on a sewing machine in 1913. Washing machines followed in 1927. Avocado green arrived as a color option in 1966. Harvest gold came in 1968. Those colors now read as a visual shorthand for a specific American era, but at the time, they were fashionable, and Kenmore sold them in enormous numbers. One family in 1973 moved into a condo and inherited copper-tone appliances left from the previous decade. The color transition from copper tone to avocado to harvest gold tracks the interior design of an entire generation of American kitchens. In 1976, Sears expanded the Kenmore name to cover refrigerators, freezers, and air conditioners, product lines that had previously carried the Cold Spot brand. The all-Kenmore kitchen became a middle-class signal. Not expensive, not showy, just reliably there. Sears didn't manufacture Kenmore appliances any more than it manufactured Craftsman tools. Whirlpool was the primary OEM partner, supplying washers with the 110 prefix, refrigerators with the 106 prefix, dishwashers with 562. General Electric and Electrolux filled in additional product lines. The relationship ran deep enough that when Whirlpool developed a new feature, the first time American consumers often saw it was under the Kenmore label. Sears was Whirlpool's most important launch partner, not the reverse. At the height of that arrangement, Kenmore accounted for roughly 25% of all major appliances sold in the United States. The Kenmore brand was, in terms of market weight, the single most successful appliance line in American history. Those appliances lasted. A dryer purchased in 1975 was still running in households 45 years later. The machines were built to live in a house for 2 decades or more, which was roughly how long families stayed in one house. Sears's reputation depended on that durability. For a long time, the durability delivered. The Auto Center extended the same institutional logic to the driveway. Sears introduced the Die-Hard battery in 1967, the name chosen to signal precisely what it promised, and eventually captured a dominant share of the American replacement battery market. The operational model was efficient, almost to the point of elegance. Drop your car at the service bay on the parking lot side of the building, hand the keys to the attendant, walk inside, finish your shopping, and pick the car up on the way out. Tires, batteries, and brakes handled. Christmas present purchased. New work shirt acquired. One trip, one parking space. Inside the store, the portrait studio photographed the families the catalog had supplied. They dressed for the occasion, arranged themselves against blue-gray backdrops under soft, diffused lighting, and sat still for the camera. The Sears portrait had a specific aesthetic that anyone who lived through it can identify instantly. The postures slightly formal, the smiles slightly rehearsed, the colors a little warmer than reality. Those photographs ended up on living room walls, in wallets, on Christmas cards, in albums carried through marriages and moves and decades of change. For millions of American families, the Sears Portrait Studio was where official family memory was manufactured. The physical record of your family's existence had a Sears layer in it. Then came everything Sears owned that most customers never consciously connected to the store. Allstate Insurance was launched by Sears in 1931. The name came directly from a Sears tire brand. Allstate was already stamped on the side walls of tires the company sold. Robert Wood, running Sears at the time, got the idea from a friend who suggested auto insurance was a natural extension of the customer relationship. The first Allstate agent worked from a card table in the Sears booth at the 1933 Century of Progress World's Fair in Chicago. By mid-century, Allstate had become deeply embedded in American consumer life, and its connection to a retail catalog company had quietly faded from public awareness. One contemporary account noted that Sears and Allstate had become like bread and butter in the mind of the consumer. In October 1981, Sears chairman Edward Telling, described by the New York Times as the architect of Sears's $800 million venture into financial services, announced 2 acquisitions on the same day. Dean Witter Reynolds, the brokerage firm, for $607 million. Coldwell Banker, the largest independent real estate company in the country, for $179 million. Both deals closed December 31, 1981. The Sears financial network formally launched in 8 pilot stores the following year, then expanded system-wide. Time magazine ran the headline, "Selling Socks and Stocks." In April 1985, Sears unveiled the Discover Card. No annual fee, cashback rewards, features the credit card industry had never offered at scale. Sears lost $106 million on the card in its first year and gained 1.5 million cardholders anyway. Within a decade, the credit card operation would account for 60% of Sears's profits. At its peak, Sears had your insurance through Allstate, your real estate agent through Coldwell Banker, your stockbroker through Dean Witter, your credit card through Discover, your kitchen through Kenmore, your tools through Craftsman, your car battery through Die Hard, your family portrait on the living room wall. Most people using all of these services simultaneously never registered they were dealing with one company. That invisibility was the architecture of the whole thing. Sears was infrastructure. Infrastructure doesn't announce itself. On South Wacker Drive in Chicago, meanwhile, the physical proof of that confidence had been rising since 1970. Construction of the Sears Tower began that year. Architects Bruce Graham and structural engineer Fazlur Khan, both of Skidmore, Owings and Merrill. Khan was a former Fulbright scholar from Bangladesh who had already revolutionized skyscraper design with the John Hancock Center, designed the building around 9 bundled structural tubes resting on reinforced concrete caissons anchored to bedrock. That system was extraordinarily efficient. The tower's structural steel weighed just 33 pounds per square foot, despite climbing 1,451 feet over 110 floors. Workers reached the 104th floor on March 13, 1973. The building was topped out May 3, 1973, surpassing the World Trade Center to become the tallest structure on Earth. It would hold that title for 25 years, until the Petronas Towers in Kuala Lumpur surpassed it in 1998. A catalog company built the world's tallest building. A business that started selling unclaimed pocket watches from a Minnesota rail station had grown large enough to need 110 floors just for its own employees. Sears moved its corporate headquarters there in 1973. Historians would note later that Sears was already beginning to lose ground when the tower opened. The building was completed at the precise moment the institution reached its apex, and the slow decline was quietly registering inside the company. A Sears executive was quoted in 1979 saying, "The catalog was once the jewel of Sears, but now it's full of last year's goods at next year's prices." By 1990, Walmart had surpassed Sears as the largest retailer in the United States. That shift happened transaction by transaction, as households across the country found Walmart's prices lower and its locations more convenient. Sears had spent the 1980s diversifying into financial services, while the core retail operations slowly ceded its most price-sensitive customers to discount competitors. Home Depot, founded in 1978, absorbed the hardware and home improvement business through the 1980s and 1990s. Best Buy took the electronics. Specialty clothing retailers claimed the apparel. Each vertical that Sears had bundled together under one roof became available cheaper and better at stores doing only that one thing. The catalog business, meanwhile, had grown structurally expensive to operate. Revenues of $3.3 billion in 1992, but losses of roughly $500 million over the prior 3 years. On January 25, 1993, Sears announced it was discontinuing the general merchandise catalog and eliminating 50,000 jobs. The last day for telephone catalog orders was May 27, 1993. The Los Angeles Times ran the headline, "Death of Wishbook Spells End to Century of Americana." Arthur Martinez, chairman of the Sears Merchandise Group, called it, "by far the most difficult of all the decisions." It's Sears. It's how the company started, and it was laden with a lot of emotion. The final general catalog ran 1,500 pages. It was the biggest edition they'd ever printed, and also the last. The timing is almost unbearable to look at directly. Sears discontinued the catalog in January 1993. The World Wide Web became publicly available to consumers that same year. In 1984, Sears had actually launched Prodigy, a joint venture with IBM and CBS, one of the earliest online services in American history. Effectively, a proto-internet retail infrastructure a decade before Amazon existed. Sears had the national distribution network. It had the phone ordering system. It had the delivery trucks. It had brand relationships with tens of millions of American households. It had built all the components of what would become the most valuable retail model in history. And then it systematically dismantled them. Amazon was incorporated in 1994, 1 year after Sears shut down the catalog. Jeff Bezos built the thing Sears walked away from. Eddie Lampert's hedge fund acquired Sears through a merger with Kmart in 2005, and Sears Holdings filed for bankruptcy in October 2018. The final years belong to a different story. This one is about what existed before that. A company that started with an unclaimed shipment of pocket watches in 1886 and eventually handled your insurance, your mortgage, your stockbroker, your credit card, your kitchen, your garage, your car, your children's Christmas list, and the official photograph of your family. It knew more about the interior of American domestic life than any private institution has known before or since, and it delivered that knowledge back to customers as tools that lasted a lifetime, appliances that outlasted the warranties, and an 834-page book that arrived every August to tell you what you wanted before you'd thought to want it. That's what made it invisible. That's what made it indispensable. When something sits inside every layer of your daily life for 60 years, you stop noticing it's there. You only notice when it's gone. There was a Sears within driving distance of every American household for 100 years. Now there are 8 left. The catalog the country was raised on doesn't even arrive anymore, and the tower they built to celebrate themselves doesn't even bear their name. Subscribe for more stories like this.